You to the first part of our summer business series. Growth strategy to maximise opportunities coming out of lockdown. It really is a very exciting time for businesses as we move out of lockdown, where for some of us are just opening our doors back up again. But there are a lot of questions that still remain. How do we continue to manage our growth as a business in these very uncertain times? And that is why I'd like to thank John Courtney, who is the CEO and founder for Boardroom Advisors, for supporting the Global Chamber in its very first summer business series. I'm looking forward to sharing John's valuable insights to help us along the way. For those who don't know John and his global team provide real-world board advisors, part-time CEOs, MDs, non-exec directors, chairmen, and paid mentors for scale-ups and SMEs. The team offers services, very valuable services, I must say, from 1 day per quarter, no recruitment fees, no long-term commitments, and interchangeable personnel as your needs change as a business. It's extremely important. John brings with him today a world of experience, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing more. And on that note, over to you, John, to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Well, you kind of wrecked my first slide, really, which was just a one slide about Boardroom Advisors, which you've kind of done for me. So that's very kind. And welcome everybody from, I guess, all different parts of the globe. Though, to be honest with you, I'm using somebody else's laptop. Mine's in the Apple shop getting fixed. So I have some technical challenges, and one thing, I can't see everybody, but that's fine. Without further ado, let me crack on and share some of the slides. Katie, please tell me if you can see that. Good. Okay, brilliant. So today we're going to talk about growth strategy to maximise opportunities after lockdown, but you kind of know that already. Right, so as I say, the first slide, Katie's kind of run through that, what it is that we do, Boardroom Advisors, part-time directors. So I won't go into any further more than that. My contact details will be at the end. So if you want to get in touch, that's absolutely fine. And by the way, we'll be doing questions at the end, but please, if something occurs to you during the slides, during the presentation, then please do put a question into the chat box, and Katie will pick those up as we go on. Otherwise, if you just finish the presentation and then ask for questions, there's kind of tumbleweed. So let's do add as we go. Okay, so business growth. Now, growth is one of the things that we help clients with. Generally, we operate around core issues of strategy, growth, funding, finance, and exit. Those are the key issues we Boardroom Advisors tackles. So growth is very much core to what we do, and a lot of our clients ask us and get our help and advice on this. And when we have meetings with clients, probably the first meeting, we ask some of these questions. Who's responsible for growth? Are they at director level? And you often find, even in some larger organizations, I went into one, and this is no word of a lie, I went into a £50 million turnover company. They've been in business for 109, 106 years, I can't remember exactly, but over 100 years. And I said, who's responsible for growth? And they said, well, Jilly, she's just come out of uni and she's done a marketing degree. And I said, I tried to find a polite way of saying this, but you're a £50 million company, and that's who's responsible for your growth. I mean, she can be part of a team, that's great. But growth is vital for the lifeblood of the organization. Clients do fall away, customers do stop buying. And if you're not adding more in at the top, then it's very difficult for companies to stand still. They do either slide backwards or grow. So you need to be feeding the machine, and you need to be feeding it, and the strategy needs to be designed by somebody senior and preferably at director level, not at manager level, and certainly not at exec level. They can be part of the team, but not driving the strategy is my suggestion. We also ask them about, how do companies analyze their growth? What are the metrics they use? How do they measure? What are the measurement tools? Also, if they ask, have they got external advice, or is it all done internally? And obviously, you know, we'd like to be involved. That's one of the reasons we asked the question. But those sort of things, and it is amazing the breadth of answers from, you know, we've got Gillies 1 year out of university to, oh, we've got a whole big marketing team, partly depending on the size of company, but not necessarily so. And generally speaking, the two messages I'm trying to get across is, one, try and get somebody at director level responsible, and consider having outside help and assistance, because you get a, you know, not everybody's in the same bubble, and that can be a limitation sometimes. So look, we're talking about growth coming out of lockdown, and one of the things that we look at, I mentioned another area, strategy, that is very important to what we do with our clients. And so we've developed a tool, relatively simple one. Not trying to say it's rocket science, but a relatively simple tool about analysing how things are different now than what they were. So I just want to run through this with you. And we call this the Crisis Strategy Assessment Tool. Forgive me, my cat has just arrived, so that's very nice. No doubt Ziggy will help us on the slides. So we get clients to answer some of these questions, either with us or just with themselves, a piece of paper, whatever. But first of all, to define the crisis in one sentence. Now, this crisis, I'm so old, I'm 109 in startup years. This is business number 7. I'm so old that I've been around for a few crises. This one's relatively easy to define in one sentence. But how you know, what's likely to change in the world? And again, we've all been talking about some of this stuff, you know, and virtual meetings and Zoom and webinars and so on, and perhaps less office and these sort of things, you know, some of the things we've all been talking about. You know, what may change in your particular industry? It's just thinking it through all the way down the line, really. And then going further, it's kind of like peel layers of an onion. How will this affect your revenue streams? And will it change? How will it change your value proposition? There are some companies that have completely pivoted their business. You know, there was one company that was doing, in my hometown of Bristol here in England, that were doing food for companies, and then everybody went on furlough and nobody went into the office. So they completely pivoted their business to doing food for people at home. And now, of course, they're having to pivot back again, because in England, UK at least, we're starting to go back into the office. So think about your proposition. How will that be altered, and will it change your customer segments and, you know, even the relationships that you have with some of your customers and clients? And what about the distribution channels and partners, and your resource needs? We talked about offices. Perhaps people will need less offices. Perhaps they won't need offices at all. Boardroom Advisors is a completely virtual business. We always have been, and we'll continue to be. But some people will change their how they're doing things, where they're doing things. And what about your cost structure? Do you need the same level of staff, the same type of staff, in the same place? Just think about those things. Oops, I've gone on to the next slide too quickly. So it's just kind of thinking about those issues, writing them down. Somehow writing them down seems to make a difference. And you can peel away the onions, the layers of the onion, and start to get a sense of what might change. And with that in mind, then having a look at some of the growth tools, but with that change element in mind. So I just wanted to go on to some of the tools to look at growth. And growth is what's growth? It's a combination of marketing and sales, isn't it? You know, the old adage is marketing makes the phone ring and sales picks up the phone and converts the call. So it's a bit of both, and we'll go through one or two bits of things. So establishing the brand, obviously very important. And this may be, in the current climate, this may be re-establishing the brand because things have changed. So it's a really good time to go back to basics. You know, you may have done all this stuff before. You may do it every year. I don't know. You may not have done it ever. But have a look with a new pair of eyes. Define your customer needs. What in the current climate are your customers' needs? What's your value proposition? And we'll come back to value prop in a bit because it is key here, I think. And from the value proposition, what messaging are you putting out there? And make sure your product is clearly defined, even if it's a service, and then develop your brand. And this whole package of establishing the brand, this is all about what is it that you are selling. And I'm a great believer in speaking in simple language, and forgive me if I ever talk some marketing mumbo jumbo, try and get me to talk in English. This is about what is it that you are selling. I think you have to be very clear about what is it that you're selling. And these bullet points really are just a way of going through that. And we talked about value proposition. So here's just a little exercise, really useful to do. We can't do this in an interactive way here on a webinar, but really useful to do back in your offices with a whiteboard or pen and paper, whatever takes your fancy. And this is a way of building up towards just double checking your value proposition. So we start in the bottom left-hand corner. So thinking about people in your industry, what is it in your industry that everybody has? And you just jot things down. It may be the same product, or the same service, or same timeline, or same price, whatever. There's some things that everybody has, and that's fine. You kind of need to move past that, but state it to start with. And then of the list of stuff, what is it that's weaker at my company? And so you move to the bottom right-hand corner, because there will be some things. And then you get to the trickier bit. What's stronger at my company? And you maybe have to think quite carefully about that. And then of those things, from top right-hand corner, strong at my company, move to top left-hand corner. What is it that's unique to my company? Now, this is tricky, and you need to try and stay away from platitudes like, you know, we're simply the best, and you know, customer service is, you know, it's be really critical. It has to be genuinely unique, and a lot of companies find that if you're really critical about being genuinely unique, that there's little, if anything, in that box. Obviously, people top right, stronger at my company, there's always something that's stronger. And one of the tricks about getting a robust value proposition, particularly in the new climate, in the new scenario, is you have to stand out from the crowd, not the cloud. So making more things stronger, and then of those stronger things, how can you make them more unique? And it's thinking through those strengths and just moving them up a gear, as it were. So actually, we're going to come back to that in a minute. Sorry, I've got a slide out of sequence, because what that little quadrant exercise does, it helps you get to the value proposition. Because when you've got several things, hopefully in the top left-hand corner, what's unique about the company, then you can be clear about how to present that as a value proposition to your customers or your clients. And I always think the best way of, you know, in old money, we used to call this USPs, unique selling points. Told you I was old. These days it's value prop. So good ways of presenting this, there's lots of ways, but try this for size if you haven't done this exercise before. First of all, try and get a headline. So what's the end benefit you're offering in one short sentence? So you can mention the product, or the customer or both, but try and make it attention grabbing. So we used to, this is my 7th business. My 6th one was a digital marketing agency. We used to do SEO, digital marketing on a performance basis. And so our value proposition was pay on results SEO. It was a big headline. We used it at shows. It said it clearly in one sentence, the end benefit that we were offering, and it mentioned the product in that particular case. So that's quite a good one. For Boardroom Advisors, yeah, I've actually found this a bit more difficult, and I've done this lots of ways. I've said we provide real-world board advisors to scale up businesses. So there are many ways of doing it. Also, have a think about supporting points as well as having a headline. Think about supporting points that come underneath it. So for us, for Boardroom Advisors, there's no recruitment fee, no long-term contract, swap advisors in and out, and it's affordable. So those are some of the supporting points. So my suggestion, have a look at your own business. Go back, create a headline for the new situation, for the new climate. It might be the same as the old one, might be different. What's the end benefit? And then what are the supporting points in order to get a robust value proposition that stands up in today's marketplace. Okay, going back to the slide that I flashed up earlier. So kind of the next stage, lead generation, this is all about who are you selling to in simple words. So again, rethink this, go through in the current climate, who are the decision makers? And how are you going to get to them? So you need to define a process. You need to look at to segment your marketplace. Who is it? What segments of the market are currently, or in pre-COVID times, were buying your product or service? And then is that the same now, or has it changed? What are your routes to the market? Are you going direct, or are you going through third parties? What are your marketing channels? So it's just, this is marketing. I was going to say basics. That's something rude. It's not basics. But it's fundamentals. That's a better word. Marketing fundamentals. Rethink them in the current climate is really all I'm saying. And then looking at communication tools. So once you've got your value proposition, how are you telling people? How are you getting that across to them? And there's lots of ways. But remember, you have both internal and external audiences. And any of your communication needs to bear in mind some of these basic principles. Lots of different methodologies, website, social, search, PR, trade shows, advertising, telesales. There's lots of different ways of communicating, and how you get that message out will depend on the communication channels that you use. And my advice is, don't try and do them all, spreading yourself very thin. For us, for all Boardroom Advisors, we rely quite a lot on our website and on social media. And because we had a digital marketing agency beforehand, then SEO is really quite important, and shows. We do a lot of shows around the country, but we don't do any advertising. We don't do any telesales. We've flirted with PR, but don't really do terribly much of that. So it's just trying to work out which channels work for you, and often that's test and measure. And you may well know that from pre-COVID times. Right, how are we doing for time? No, not so bad. Right, I've got, I should have flashed this up to you at the beginning, my apologies. So we have a free tool which I'd like to share with you, or at least show you where it is, and it's around growth, and we call it a scale-up growth diagnostic, and obviously very relevant for this. And we host it on our website, and you see a little red arrow pointing to resources section on the Boardroom Advisors website, and you just go there on the drop down, and you'll find one of the drop down items is in fact the Scale Up Growth Diagnostic itself, and this is the start of the diagnostic. It's self-diagnosis. We're not making recommendations. There are some 30 questions in 3 sections, which ask you about your strengths and your weaknesses, and then comes out with a report at the end, which, as I say, goes through your strengths and weaknesses of each section, gives you a to-do list, and gives you a starting point as to where you are. So it's free to use, so I wholly recommend it. Right, so that's the diagnostic. I thought I was going to show you a slide of the report, but I'm not. Final things just to say, if you want to use outside help, whether it's us or whether it's somebody else, why use advisors? The obvious things really: outside opinion, there's expertise and experience and contacts. They'll help you plan. Most of all, they're an external help and advice. Somebody outside your bubble is always a good idea in my experience. And when you're choosing an advisor, have a look at who has the right attitude, a coaching mentality, and some experience. If it's about growth and scaling up, then make sure they have experience in that area. But they're not, always short-termism is easy for companies to slip into because there's budgets to meet and targets to meet and so on. But you really want an advisor helping you think long-term and strategically rather than short-term and tactically. That they share some of your values, and that they have a good reputation. So, just ask around. And I often think it's helpful to draw up a brief for an advisor. So to be really clear about what it is that you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, and the sort of advisor that you want, and what sort of role you want from them, whether a mentor or a board advisor, or and what skills and experience you're looking for. It may be about today's topic around growth, but it may be strategy, funding, exit. It may be something else. That general board advisor thing sounds a bit grey, and you can have that title as a board advisor, but it really helps the advisor and it really helps the company if actually there's a clear brief. And how are you going to measure success? What specific goals are you going to expect the advisor to achieve? Be realistic with them. And what timescales? And that I think is really useful. That's really kind of all I had time, just about half an hour, Katie.
You've done really well, John. Thank you very much. And now that was really, really insightful. And I've got a couple of questions I've written down because as a business owner myself, I'm going through these challenges, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call are. Now, Michael Quigley, thank you for your question. So what we'll do now is I'll get you to stop share, John, and then we'll see you. And what we'll do is we'll go into Q&A, and the first question is from Michael Quigley from Cataholis. Michael is an amazing member of the Global Chamber here in London. Thank you for your question. What is something that excites you at the moment regarding the opportunities currently open to people doing business globally?
Great question. And hold 2 seconds, Katie. Have a cup of tea. But no, I need to plug my laptop in before it runs out of battery. Sorry.
He's going to run out of battery, everybody.
Don't worry, don't panic. It's just there.
We're having a real day of it today, aren't we, John? It's like a little bit of faulty towers from London. That's okay. So do you want me to repeat that question,
yes,
John?
Sorry, would you mind? I was focusing very much on where my electrics
No
was.
problem. What is something that excites you at the moment regarding the opportunities currently open to people doing business globally?
Well, it's funny with COVID in so many ways is horrible and terrible, and my heart goes out to people who have suffered. But it creates, I think any crisis creates so many opportunities, and so many businesses, in the financial crisis 2008, there were so many new businesses that were formed out of that crisis situation, and that was horrible in many different ways. And I think what excites me, to answer your question, is the fact that so many people have pivoted their business and done so quickly. You know, the whole way in which we've all got used to working from home, working virtually, and you know, we had no resources at home, but you know, a week later we've got everything. And it's just, you know, that really excites me, how people have been so flexible, how so quick to react, and so quick to adjust their businesses to a new environment. And I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, and I think yeah, just feeding off that, I'm seeing that we've had to pivot really fast, and we've almost been fast forwarded into sort of the next sort of decade, haven't we, in that sense? Yeah. Thank you, John. That was a really good answer. I've got another question here from Doug, our wonderful CEO and founder of Global Chamber. How to keep our mind open to the new opportunities versus plugging away at what worked before? Really interesting question.
Tricky, isn't it? Really tricky. And I guess I'd go back to the very first slides in the presentation, is have a look at what might change and what you might want to do differently. It is, I guess, with some things you have to, sometimes the crisis is so great you have to make the change, and it's almost, you don't have to be brave because you know what you've been doing isn't going to work. So you have to make the change, and it almost forces you to be a bit more adventurous, as it were. But yeah, Doug's question hints at, you know, maybe some people have to not pivot the whole business completely, but maybe just adjust a little nudge here and a little nudge there. And sometimes you don't know how much you need to change. The answer I always find with marketing type activities is test and measure. You know, you should be able to measure what you have already been doing. Now do a slight pivot and test and measure that, see if that's working. Maybe a different pivot, maybe run an A/B test, whatever, you know, whatever you're doing. So just test and measure and see what results you can get out. Take a poll from your customers or your clients. What is it you want us to do differently in the current climate, for example? I don't know what the answer is, Katie. I just know test and measure and asking your clients can't be terribly wrong answers.
I like the point that you said. It's about incremental gains, really. And sometimes we're forced to make change, and that's healthy. But then how do we learn and grow off that is the real question. How do we then keep steering the Titanic away from the inevitable iceberg or the next iceberg that we see coming? Thanks, John. We do have a couple more questions. Mike, it's really lovely to see you jumping on the call today. Mike is a very trusted executive coach in my community. He says, thanks for the presentation. How do you ensure the leadership team own the strategy and not the advisor? I love that question. Yeah. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, no, really good question. And the answer, I think, always is by involving them. So any advisor, any consultant, any non-exec, whatever it is, what we always say to our people is facilitation should be your watchword. Okay, so you're not there. I mean, you might chip in some ideas and some suggestions and some contacts and this sort of stuff. But if you're running a session, you know, like that grid we were doing about what was unique in your company. So when I run that with businesses, I'm just a facilitator. So I'm there to help draw stuff out of people, but they have to work out themselves what it is that's strong and weak in their organization and what's unique and build their own value proposition. It's their business, it's not mine as an advisor. And by doing that, they own it because they have designed it. That's, you know, then that's maybe kind of the difference between running a session like that and you know, perhaps being at a board meeting where, you know, you have to maybe give some different types of advice. But involving people is the way of getting them owning it.
Yeah, there's something about having skin in the game.
Yeah.
About, you know, being on the journey, on the growth journey with the company, or especially if you own the company, you can get so blindsided by what's right in front of you that you forget to see the wood through the trees, so to speak. Very interesting and good question. Thank you, Mike. Doug's got another question. How is business changing in Britain? That's a really good question. And how is going virtual going to impact how we go marketing and sales?
Well, listen, it's fascinating. In Britain, personal opinion, I think the government did several things wrong, but they have done some things very right. Obviously, the vaccinations and also they've supported businesses and industry very well in the UK, and they've financed a huge furlough scheme. We haven't yet seen massive, horrible redundancies. I guess those will increase as the furlough government support system is started to withdraw, but it has been very good. We're constantly asking through our marketing, we're constantly asking people if they need help in certain areas, and we get a lot of replies back saying, actually, you know, there are some people saying actually our business is better than it was pre-COVID. We're getting a lot that are saying we're doing fine, and we're getting a surprisingly small number saying, you know, we've really been hit by COVID and are having to close the business or run it down, or it's much smaller. There are some, but it's a surprisingly small amount. So the proof will be when the government support starts being taken away, and that's going to be in the autumn, I guess. But for now, at least, things are holding together in the UK. There was a second part to Doug's question.
Yeah, so has the pandemic impacted the way you're marketing, selling or operating Board Advisors as a company, regionally and globally?
Yes, yes, certainly. So Boardroom Advisors, so yeah, we're a UK-based company. We've got national coverage in the UK, and we've started to expand around the world. And COVID for us has helped our global expansion, because instead of having to do lots of face-to-face meetings, suddenly everybody is really familiar with Zoom, and so I can have 7, 8, 10 Zooms in a day, and I can be in a different country on each Zoom, and that bit of it is wonderful. You know, I'm going around the globe. You know, we need to. The way we operate is we set up international directors in different countries, and we're always looking for new countries to expand to and new international directors, and this has really helped us expand our business. So, you know, we're now operating in India, for example, and I wouldn't have got to India. So that's just an example. But there's lots more countries to conquer for us.
There certainly is, and with Global Chamber, we're making that a possibility with you. I'm loving the fact that we're going to be meeting your Indian partner as well. I've got the email there. I'll look to have a one-to-one. Doug's got an extra part to this question, and he'd really love to learn what are some of the success stories you've seen, and why are they succeeding, these businesses?
Yeah, good question, really. I think the ones that I've seen have either pivoted their business. So some are lucky that their business has been not related to COVID. So for construction, for example, in the UK, construction has continued that business relatively unaffected. Others seriously affected, and they've had to pivot, and some completely changed their business model. So the successful ones for me are the ones that have adjusted to the climate and changed their model and reassessed their client base and their value proposition, all the stuff we've just been talking about, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I saw some big successes in the sort of digital space and the tech security space, right, really taking advantage of the pivoting that the businesses are going through. So I feel like there is a shift in terms of, you know, how businesses respond to these big events that happen around the globe. But that's really interesting. Oh, Doug's got another question. I'll ask Doug's question, then I'll ask my question. What are the lingering impacts of Brexit? Oh no, the B word came up. Thanks, Doug. Any opportunities? There's always opportunity, but I'll hand over to you, John.
Yes. I mean, listen, yes, so while opportunities for us are forging more relationships overseas, and the government's trying to help, you know, there's some grant funding available to help companies in the UK export. So those are the opportunities. the world is out there. We love our European friends, and we'll still continue to trade with them. But this means our focus has to be a little bit further and a bit wider. And lots of people want to trade with us, which is great. And, that's, if you go back to the British Empire, for good and bad, it was all about trading with the world. So, I think there's some great opportunities.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I'm really watching closely as these trade agreements starting to form with other countries. And I think there is just a huge amount of opportunity for Britain to trade with the rest of the world. But I'm also seeing more collaboration between businesses in the EU and the UK, because they need to now collaborate at different levels. It's not just one anymore. So it really is a different dynamic forming, and I think we've got more to see over the coming couple of years.
And you've got an Australian background, Katie, so I gather there's a tariff-free deal coming between Australia and the UK. So yes. All of your beef and all of your lambs all going to come over here, I guess.
Well, I think that's been happening, and I think I'm really waiting to see what that agreement looks like. And I know that they've been working on that really hard, and watch this space for the people on the call, because we've got some really good events coming up towards the end of the year that will be focusing on global trade. And I think one last question from me, there's no more questions in the chat box. I was just really curious, John, in all your years of working with business owners in that sort of scale up SME space, what would you say is the most common setback that they encounter? And what I mean is, what holds them back from growth?
Well, that's a tricky one. I could have flagged that one up for me to think about beforehand. Listen, there's always... There's several things that spring to mind. I think probably the top of the pile for me would be it's always people. I know, when I've had businesses in the past, what's held me back has been perhaps my limitation, my personal limitation of getting the best people available to me, because there's always, particularly as you're a young growing business, you've got financial constraints and you can't always afford the best people. And kind of that was one of the driving forces of Boardroom Advisors, that for growing businesses, well, they can have the best people, they just don't have to have them every day of the week. If you don't need or can't afford the really best person 5 days a week, well, have them a day a week, have them 2 days a month, whatever. And that kind of opens up the horizons. And rather than, if you take marketing, or rather than having to downgrade from a marketing director and having a marketing manager or marketing exec, well, have a day or two a month of a marketing director. So you've got some strategic advice that move. Tactics don't move the business forward. Tactics make the current situation better. So you need strategic advice in order to, imagine it's like a ship, to move the ship's direction. You've got to have enough muscle power to do that. And that's strategic advice in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that's good. And it's something about what you said, it's the people, the right people in the business, and owning the strategy. And I feel like all of this messaging is starting to come together around what's important. What is the secret recipe for success in moving a business forward with growth? And Doug has raised what's the rest of the summer series looking like for us. And I know we've got quite a few events coming up. And on that note, I just wanted to say thanks to John and for your support with Boardroom Advisors for helping us spur on the London Business Summer Series. It's a bit of a mouthful. The next event is going to be held on the 17th of June at 4 p.m. And our topic is going to be strategy for the new normal. And I'm really looking forward to that. As a business owner, gosh knows what the new normal is going to look like. And I was having a conversation with another business owner today in London, and she's just puzzled. She doesn't know whether she's Arthur or Martha, whether she's here or there. There's a Zoom call in the morning and then she's out in London in the afternoon. So there's something about how we operate now which just hasn't settled yet. So I'd really love to hear from you on the 17th of June around what your tips are for the new normal. And in terms of the rest of the series, what are some of the things you'll be sharing with us across the series, John?
Well, Well, if we talk about the next one for now, then certainly what we've got on strategy, I'll be showing some of the tools in order to help define the strategy and look at things afresh, not just the tool we covered in this one, but some other tools, and there'll be some free downloads for people as well. So
Right.
do come for that. And then we've got another couple in the series, haven't we, Katie? Remind me.
We do, yeah. And we'll be sharing all of this information to you guys. We've got the boardroom, how to replace boardroom advisors, which will be a really interesting one. Yeah, the growth strategy will continue that discussion along. And just before we close, I just wanted to say a very big thanks. So Doug's actually put up, what will you be eating at virtual dining later this month? Well, I will be sharing with you all, and please go onto our events page, virtual dining, and the national dish for Britain is a chicken tikka masala. Crazy, so I will be having, Doug, a chicken tikka masala from M&S on the way back to my desk for virtual dining at 6 p.m. And you'll have to remind me of the date of that. But if you are up for virtual dining with us, it's a really lovely way to connect with people all over the globe. You just don't know who's going to be in the room, and we can all have a lovely meal and learn about the culture of eating in different countries. So to close, thank you very much, John. I found that really insightful, especially as a business owner. I'm looking forward to doing your diagnostics tool. We will be sharing that with all of the people on the call today. Please register for the event on the 17th of June at 4 p.m. We've also got global dining later on in the month as well. And I'd like to say thank you to every one of you for coming on this afternoon, for your participation. Big shout out to Jenny Lau from iLaw. I saw you, Michael, Tom, Lara, David and Scott. Good to see you all supporting us here at the Global Chamber. And for those of you who don't know about Global Chamber, we are the first and only Chamber of Commerce located in hundreds of metros that is focused on growing cross-border trade investment in a really collaborative way. We are literally everywhere. And if you are a leader who is seeking additional growth for your company beyond one metro area, join us to connect and grow. Take advantage of the Global Tribe. We are focused on helping you with your global and local business dilemmas on a daily basis. We get you, we get it, and we're here to help. So don't be shy, please. No, not fish and chips, Doug. Don't be shy, reach out and connect with us. We're here to support you. And on that note, I want to say thanks again, John. Been an absolute delight.
Thanks very much, Katie. Nice to meet you, and nice to meet everybody else. Yeah,
thanks to Doug and Cesar and the team, and to all of our attendees today. It's been lovely having you on, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye now.